Hello, Madris. Good to have you here. Before we go into details, would you like to quickly touch on your professional background and how you got into this?
Absolutely. So my name is Madris Kinard-Tomes, and I previously worked for the FDA. I was a public health analyst and started my own company called Device Events about 5 years ago when I left the FDA and started to get an idea that the data that we had when I worked there isn't data that is really publicly available. So I have been collecting all of the adverse events and built a system to understand the patterns of problems and look for signals. And so a signal could be anything from a death from a certain type of device or a pattern of malfunctions. And so that's essentially what Device Events does. It's used by journalists around the world, Consumer Reports, Mayo Clinic, and public citizens. So there are a lot of different groups that use the data. The data is all publicly available, but it's very difficult to find. So anytime someone says, well, can't I just go to the FDA site and look for this? Well, you can try, but if you need to look through 10 million reports and you can only view 500 at a time and you have to click on each report individually to see it, that it's so overwhelming. And you know, that's really the challenge for any physician or dentist who wants to look for these reports, is that they're hidden, not on purpose. They're hidden because it's a needle in a haystack.
I see.
And so
I get it.
why I started my company.
Yeah. So that explains the main purpose of Device Events, and actually, they paint a different picture than the encrypted FDA reports, right? It's like an easy to read tool, right? Or more easy to read.
It's like a Google type of search engine. So you could type in dental implants, not even knowing the names of the companies that make them or the models. You don't have to know anything about the device to do the search. And it would automatically return, 1.5 million serious injuries or 29 deaths for a specific type of device.
Wow. Do you have any ideas of the numbers of dental implants that are reported to the FDA and how many reports finally make the way to the FDA?
So the total number of adverse events for dental implants is 2.5 million. A large number of those, 200,000 of them that have a lot more data than they used to have come in just in the last year. And so that's one of the reasons that I have kind of taken on this initiative to better understand what might be going on with the implants. Even the FDA typically didn't require, actually they don't require physicians or dentists to report to them. But because they started to see this pattern of problems, they had a webinar about 1.5 years ago for dentists to say, hey, we're starting to see this. Please send us reports directly so we can understand what's going on. And since that webinar took place, 372,000 dentists have reported directly to the FDA.
Wow,
or I should say 372,000 reports from dentists. It could be only 10 that are sitting there filling out reports all day, but you get the idea that they are starting to understand, well, maybe these issues weren't because I did something wrong. And I have heard from dentists that, they're saying that I had the technique was wrong, or it wasn't a problem with their implant. But when you can look at this data in the aggregate and see how many reports have come in, you start to say, okay, well, maybe I wasn't doing something wrong. Maybe we need to look more closely at the devices and what is contained in the devices.
Okay, that's interesting. So I see people are looking for answers on this high numbers of failures of failed dental implants, mostly blaming either the patient for bad dental hygiene or having unfavorable clinical preconditions, or at least the lack of education of the dentist. So we very rare see the information that, or let's say the idea that it could be the device itself. Maybe it's a mixture of all these reasons, right?
And one of the things that the FDA hasn't done well, and I do love the FDA. I think they have a lot of good scientists. They're trying very hard. They are managing 180,000 different devices.
That's a lot.
Market. They have a lot to do.
Yeah.
And so the more we can report to them what we find, the better. But that being said, there are some things that they could do better. And, the time to identify these problems and communicate them really has lagged behind. So, for instance, there was a meeting about metals a year ago. An entire day was spent talking about amalgam and fillings and mercury, and very little time was discussed, was set aside for dental implants. And so what you see there is that it's the group that kind of makes the most noise that is getting the FDA's attention. So that's why you've seen, Facebook groups like eSure Problems and the breast implant groups. There is action. The FDA is putting out notices, but they haven't put out any kind of communication about dental implants, yet they are the second most reported device to the FDA in history.
Wow. Okay, that is interesting. Well, this is news. I still have to digest this information. In your opinion, if what would a patient think? At least we are sooner or later, all of us will be patients someday. If a patient gets the idea, gets to know the high numbers of failed implants, and that far too many implants, if they found at least an information that is public, see a lot of publications that implants are not as clean as promised or as clean as expected from the clinician. Sorry that I have to focus on dental implants because this is our field here. I know that there are a lot of problems outside as well. Do you think that they should be concerned or should ask their doctors for being sure or being more safe for the selection or the choice of an implant?
That's a really good point. There are so many manufacturers of these, and so I think that having the patient have time to do some research isn't a bad thing. Now, something to note is that the adverse event reports that come in to the FDA, there is no denominator. So, if I'm to look at one device company and see that they have, 300,000 reports for serious injuries, is that the market leader? Have they done 5 million of these? Is that a big number? So you have to look at the numbers, relatively speaking.
Okay, got it.
You have to think about there are a lot of times that you don't hear about a problem. In fact, that's often, I know people that have had them and say, oh, mine have been great. But when something goes wrong with them, it can go very wrong because if you've lost the bone in your jaw and can't get something else now in its place, when they say it's a serious injury and there are 1.5 million of them, they mean serious injury. They didn't say that was a malfunction. I mean, important and reportable.
It's really interesting information. It was a great pleasure talking to you. I look forward to our collaboration. I look really forward. And maybe both of our initiatives can help make the medical or dental world a more transparent, a cleaner, if not better place.
Yes, that's my goal as well.